Welcome everybody to our 168th episode of AI Pod and today's AI Pod Live. Um, today's episode is brought to you by AI Pod, which all of you know is a community of 1,250 plus AI enthusiasts, as well as Axel, which is a one of a kind startup accelerator for AI businesses. So, with that, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Raiza Martin. Raiza, and I, by the way, we are meeting for the first time today. Before that, we've exchanged a few messages, but she's been a person I've been wanting on our podcast for a very long time, ever since the time she was a product manager at Google for NotebookLM. And Raiza, I should give you this short background on why we are so interested in talking to you. AI Pod as a community started in October of last year, which is not even a year, by the way. And we started with a community of just 35 enthusiasts, AI enthusiasts. And what I used to do is generate one podcast every day, a 5 to 6 minute podcast on a topic on AI, and publish it to the group. And I would use NotebookLM to generate the podcast and ChatGPT to generate the content for it. And that's so for me, it would take 5, 6 minutes to put this up. So I could do this every day. And with that, the community grew. Today, of course, it's 1,250 plus, uh, growing. Now, of course, it's very diverse. We've got professionals, we've got students, we've got people from different industries, we've got startup founders, we've got investors. So it's a very big platform now with multiple subgroups within it. So the interest is very wide. So the only time we use NotebookLM these days is that I put out a weekly AI news every Monday. And that's again generated with NotebookLM and ChatGPT content. So that's the background. And that's what I wanted to tell you. And because this whole group started with NotebookLM, we wanted to bring you on. Of course, now you're the CEO of Huxe, you're a startup founder yourself. So what we're going to do, Raiza, is that talk a little bit about your NotebookLM days and then move on to Huxe, because I'm sure many people are interested in that.
Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I love that background. I love that Notebook LM made this so much easier for you. All in all, I think very exciting, and I'm excited to talk to you about Hux too.
Yeah, sure. So let's start with NotebookLM. I heard or I read somewhere that it was one of Google's 20% projects. Is that correct?
Yes. So when I first joined Google Labs, there were no projects in labs. And the thing that I first shipped when I joined was AI Test Kitchen. And AI Test Kitchen was Google's first consumer AI. It was like kind of like a demo sandbox for people to try AI. And that was the primary project that I was working on. But, on the side, we were like, we really should be building real products with AI, right? Not just demo surfaces for people to try it, because it's like, what's the point of a demo, right? If there's no like real thing to use behind it. And so we started thinking about, well, what could we build? What are some real things we could build? But we didn't have like a fully spun out team just to work on products yet. And so one of the things we started doing was like, okay, we have this idea. Why don't we start doing it? And so kind of classically in Google fashion, even though we didn't say it's a 20%, that's what it ended up being. We were like, okay, we have this idea, we'll keep working on it on the side.
Yeah, you may want to just tell listeners here what a 20% project is, because I think it's a very
Oh,
interesting concept.
yeah, no, it's a great question. So at Google, it's really funny because the term 20% project, I feel like, is a little bit misleading because it sounds like you go to work and you spend 20% of your time, doing this other thing. But I think many people know this, right? Like if you're passionate about something, you're excited about something, it's a lot more than 20%. It actually ends up being quite a lot of your time. It's almost like you would work 8 hours on your regular thing and then you're going to work 6 hours on this other thing. And so you actually end up doing quite a bit of work, working on two things at once. But 20%, I'd say it implies two things at Google. I think the first thing is that hey, it's not an official project. It's just something that people really want to work on. And so you come up with it, maybe yourself, some other team members, maybe not even from your team, and you just start it on your own. Whether or not, you have buy-in from executives as you traditionally might need in a corporate structure. The second thing that it implies is that it shouldn't take a lot of time, which is the 20% piece I was just commenting on. But I think, as I was just saying, it's not really true because if you're really excited about something, you do end up working on it far more than 20%.
Sure. And when did it become a 100% project? When did it really pick up steam? And
Wow.
what
Okay.
triggered it?
That's a really good question. I mean, I'm gonna say that um, we started working on Notebook back when it was called Project Tailwind before ChatGPT. And so we had this idea of how it should work. It was pretty basic at the time, which is just you could upload a document and you could chat with it. And at the time, it was only one document. We had to start with one document first. And a lot of the demos were just that. It was like one document, chat with it, one document, chat with it. Okay, upload more documents, chat with more documents. But what really got the team funded is after several months, we did a demo of it and we showed it off, and it was still pre-chat GPT. And we said, look, we think that people are basically going to have LLMs where you could talk to them about their general knowledge, but it's equally as interesting to actually create a surface for a user where it's constrained to whatever knowledge you upload to it or whatever information you upload to it. And that's how we got buy-in and got official funding for it.
But was there an external trigger? Was ChatGPT one of the triggers?
No, this was before even that.
Ah, I see. So it
Before even
became a
ChatGPT.
full-fledged project even before ChatGPT. So
Well, I
this
think
was,
it was like a little bit slower. For example, like this moment that I'm remembering, we got like two engineers. So
Hmm, okay.
so then, obviously it's like we hit more milestones, so to speak, and sort of like we made the product promise bigger and bigger. We were able to get more people on the team, and eventually when we actually did Google I/O, there was about 5 people on the team.
Okay. And once you got funded, then what was it? It was more like a corporate project, or it was still a startup within a big company?
I would say Google Labs in general feels a lot like a startup organization within a company because the teams tend to be pretty small, tend to move pretty fast, tend to experiment with sort of newer, less traditional ideas. And so I would say the environment overall is much more startup-y compared to, traditionally what we would imagine as like more corporate, kind of like team structures or process. I would say that at Notebook in particular, we didn't really think too much about whether or not it was a startup. I think we were mostly just very driven to ship really quickly and do interesting things.
And where did this idea of actually generating podcasts come from? Because I know retrieving of information from a bunch of documents is a no-brainer. But where did that come in? Because for us, that was the wonder piece.
Well, I think when I always had a very simple framework for Notebook. Like it wasn't actually like that complex or I think that crazy. It was very simply, I imagined Notebook to work as you have a set of inputs, you have a set of capabilities in the middle, things you can do with the inputs, and then there are outputs, which is the finished artifacts that you would have when you were done with whatever process, input, capability, etc. And in the very beginning, it was kind of weird to have a framework because you're like, your input was a document, your capability was chat, and your output was an answer. It was just a text answer, right? But I thought about it and I was like, look, we're headed towards a world quickly where those three things are going to change incredibly rapidly over the next several years. And so you're going to have a ton of really interesting inputs, ton of really interesting capabilities and possibly outputs we've never seen before,
Mhm.
right? And then think about a machine where those outputs become inputs too in the
Mm.
future. And it was just really crazy. And so I just thought about continuously increasing the inputs, increasing the capabilities, and increasing the outputs. And it really was just whatever was available. And there was no particularly special insight, I would say. I didn't have like a wow, this thing's going to be brilliant moment. I think it really was just as simple as, well, the things you could upload today, at the time that we launched audio overviews, we already had quite a few different inputs, including slides. I was like,
Mm.
wow, it would be really interesting if you take this sort of hodgepodge of things you can upload, and then you can create like our very first sort of tangible thing that you could output a podcast, an audio thing.
Right.
Um, but even in my mind, that was like one of many things we could do.
Wow, cool. Is that, you think, one of the proudest moments in terms of designing something which would, for in a product which would become really popular?
Yeah, I mean, I felt very proud. I think I felt really excited about the journey that the team had had, to be honest with you. Just the idea that we had been working on Notebook at that point for over 2 years. And for the most part, like Notebook was relatively unknown. Like we
Mm,
just kept working. We never put marketing budget towards it. We didn't even do any real, um, even organic marketing ourselves. Like we were never like trying to tell other people about it. We just kept working. And it got to a point where Notebook users started to tell other people about it. And
mm,
then that's how
mm,
we would get new users. And we felt like, wow, it's really starting to pick up. This is really positive. But then when we launched audio overviews and it blew up, it sort of it sort of had this like interesting effect on the team where we were like, wow, right? You could actually just work for 2 years, not have any particularly great or kind of like slam dunk traction. And then you could build one thing, and then suddenly people just love this thing. Like millions of people love this thing.
mm, mm.
And it was a really good thing to experience. Like you hear about it from other people's journeys, but it was really good for us to experience it ourselves because then I think as somebody who likes building, gives you a lot of confidence where you're like, oh, I see, right? Like sometimes the things that are great are not obvious. The things that are going to make it pop are not obvious. So actually the thing that's most important is to just keep going.
Yeah, just keep innovating. I mean, that's a great innovation. And I know today NotebookLM has video overview as well, and it has mind maps and a whole bunch of outputs, as you call it. Uh,
Yeah.
these are these are fascinating. Is there anything you would do differently, thinking back to those days?
Oh.
Anything top of the
Um,
mind?
that's very good question. I mean, there are a lot of things. I think it was actually really hard working on Notebook. I think that um it's a very personal answer, but I wish I had spent a lot more time maybe trying to understand more about like Google's sort of social complexity. I
Mm,
think there are many things like to ship Notebook that I myself was like I was just very like headstrong about it because it was like, from my perspective, that's what it took to ship it. And I pause now and I think about that time and I'm like, oh, very interesting. All the cast of characters that I was always working with. I wish I had a deeper understanding for why they were doing what they were doing. But in the moment, I just didn't care. I really just wanted to ship.
cool, cool. Now we'll move on to your entrepreneurship. But folks, we're going to leave. I'm going to stop chatting with Raiza at 8:05 or so. So if you have questions, post the questions in the Q&A box. I'll pick them up and ask Raiza your questions. So remember, post in the Q&A box, not in the chat box. Okay, then Raiza, let's come to entrepreneurship. So how did you make that decision? You're working in a big company, you're enjoying your job. Obviously, the product you've built is super successful. And what happened?
I was just thinking about this question recently because I realized that not a lot of people know. And I was like, oh, I didn't really talk to anybody about it because, to me, it was my business. But I I was really reflecting on this, and I'll tell you a funny story. When I quit Google, when I said I was leaving, I think a lot of people thought I was not okay. They were like, oh my gosh, like you must be having some kind of like mental health problem. Like you're
Hmm.
probably burnt out or something. You probably need a break. And I was like, what? They're like, why do you think that? And people were just so baffled because they think a lot of people couldn't imagine doing what I was about to do, which was, I had spent my whole life relatively uh you know, we were not well to do when I was growing up. We immigrated to the United States. I worked a bunch of different jobs to get to where I was at Google, and it was very safe, very secure. My parents were really proud of me, felt successful. People could not imagine that I would just give that up. But I didn't really think about it that way. I think about life as being a series of opportunities that you create for yourself. Do you think that you have that ability? I think every person does. And the thing in my mind was like, wow, we've done this really important thing. It seems like I've created a lot of opportunity for myself and the people who want to go with me.
Hmm.
And the opportunity in my mind was to go out there and keep building and maybe build different things, build faster, build it in a different way even. I think just the opportunity to go have an adventure.
Hmm.
And on a very personal level, like I think about that just in terms of like how I want to live my life. I want to live my life every day looking forward to my day. And I really thought about what that would mean to me. And the idea of an adventure to go build something new was just to me, if I didn't do it in that moment, I don't know when I would have done it. It seemed like the absolute right time.
Great. And when did this happen, by the way?
So we left Google in December.
Hmm.
We made the decision in November. It was very fast. Like we didn't think about it for a long time. Actually, the person who thought about it longest was probably me, which was I do this exercise every morning. I wake up and I think, am I excited to do what I'm going to do today? And every day that, pretty much for my life, actually, I really was like, yes, 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 yes. And every time my answer is no, that's usually when I change something. And it actually happened working on Notebook, where not only was I waking up and I was like, oh, I'm not particularly excited, but I was having trouble going to sleep because I would go to sleep and I was like, oh man, like I really want to do this other thing. And it was like burning me up inside. And I was like, I can't do it anymore. Like I can't just keep doing the notebook thing just because I think it's what I'm supposed to do. And so it
Is
was
it
very,
because of the corporate structure, Riza? Is it because of that?
I think in some ways that is true because practically speaking, the type of work that I enjoy the most, and I think is the most enjoyable, especially right now, is to actually build things, to work on the project yourself, to think about how it should work, to write the code yourself, to go talk to users, go figure out how are you going to make money from something. And those are things I think that have a lot of diversity in those tasks, right? Like if you're doing that stuff and you're doing it every day, you have different tasks every day. Towards the end at Notebook, I felt that my tasks were mostly the same. I was just going to meetings every day, and I was just talking to people, trying to like, across Google, make things work. And I just didn't really, for that moment in time, I didn't love it. Because I wanted to keep going. We're so early in technology. And it's like, look, you have a path, right? Like you could become an executive and you could have product managers under you and they get to do the fun stuff. Or you
Mm.
could go do the fun stuff yourself. So for me, it was pretty straightforward. I wanted to go do the fun stuff myself.
Great, great. And that's how Hux happened. Did you have the idea of Hux in November last year?
No, actually, it's super funny. So I have two co-founders, Jason and Steven. And it's really funny because we always joke about this. People love to ask us, oh, how did you guys decide to leave Google? What's your story? And we were like, it was literally breakfast. We had breakfast. Me and Steven used to have breakfast every day. And I remember we were eating and I was like, Steven, do you want to start a company? And he thinks about it for, I don't know, like 5 seconds. And he was like, yeah, sure. It was just like it was very nonchalant, but it was just like very straightforward. And we had an idea. It was a very different idea. But we didn't put a lot of time into thinking about it. We were like, you know what? Here's what we know about building products. Your first idea is probably not the idea. And so the most important part is to start, to keep going, and to end up somewhere. And I think about Hux in this way too, which is like, hey, you're probably looking at like iteration number 12 since we left, right? Where we've iterated from thing to thing to thing, and we've landed pretty squarely on this concept. But even the concept itself will shift, especially now that we have thousands of people using the product.
Talk to us through this iterations. That's very important for many of the listeners over here because many are founders. They are going through iterations as well. Some have heard of iterations but not quite understood what really is. So you went through 12 iterations. What was the feedback loop? What made you get into the next iteration?
So I think this is a particularly timely question because more than ever, particularly with AI tools, iteration it's technically cheap, right? Like you can change your entire idea in a matter of days, or you could have a new idea in a matter of seconds. It doesn't cost you anything to build a new thing anymore. But the real cost is sort of like a
Is it
mental.
because it's easy to write code now? Is that
Yeah,
why it
yeah.
is? Yeah.
Because it's easy to write code, it's easy to generate wireframes from it. Like
Mm,
the cost to creating a product has been driven much lower, like the actual technical coding implementation piece of it. So that's all I'm referring to. But
mm,
the most expensive part of that is sort of the mental, emotional, and social kind of aggregate of building products. And so the way that I think about iteration is sort of thinking about a generally broad space that you want to play in, right? So let's pretend, like, take the broadest space that you can right now. You could say AI. I want to go make AI things.
mm,
Well, you can't make a generic AI nothing, so you have to pick something, right? So you'll try to pick something that's like your expertise or your passion, and you still have to keep drilling it down until you have a product. But if you think about that, each step of the way, you made a lot of assumptions and you just made decisions, and that's great. But the point that you ended up at is probably not completely correct, but it's a really good starting point. And so when you think about sort of the origination of that journey and the product that you build, let's say that's your MVP, right?
mm, mm,
That's where iteration really begins. So I try to make it very clear to people you can't iterate if you don't have anything. So don't,
mm. Yeah, sure.
like
Absolutely.
even an iteration of an idea, like because I see a lot of people do this too. They'll like iterate on ideas. I'm just like, don't do it.
Mm,
That's like a very futile thing to do because you're just iterating in your brain. It's like not that interesting. If you
mm,
iterate in real life, you have a far greater chance of increasing your intuition of what to do and what not to do. And that intuition could be technical, that intuition could be social, it could even be emotional. But the point I'm making is that if you want to get someplace, the first thing you should do is build a car. And along the way, your car is gonna break, shit's gonna fall off. I'm sorry. People are gonna try to get in the car with you. You might realize you need a bigger car. There are many things, right?
mm,
But the
mm,
analogy is that without the car, you're not gonna know what to do. You can keep thinking about the route, but it's not worth it. So,
mm.
in terms of sort of the practical pieces of like, okay, let's say now you have your car, right? You have your first product. The next thing you should sprint towards is getting it to the first person who's actually going to use it. And it could be people you like, it could be your family, it could be your friends, but I generally try to tell people the very first user should be you, right? So just try to use it yourself, try to increase your intuition. If your target user you think is not yourself, just try to pretend to be that person or do as much kind of work that you can to try to embrace that person's life, whoever they are. But really, more than anything, give it to that person. And then you will figure it out. And I think like the number one feedback that you're really looking for is, does this meaningfully change the other person's life? Right. And it's there's many, 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 many ways that you can think about that. But I think like you could think about meaningfully changing someone as like saving time,
Mm,
making more money, making them happier. There's like really only a few levers that you
mm,
can sort of think of, and that's what you should focus on. And I think once you start to touch on those feelings, you see it in people, you will have a greater understanding of like what the product has to be. In fact, one of our iterations we discovered, we built this kind of massive thing that was like had like a personality test. You could generate images, you could generate videos, you could chat with a chatbot. It was like it just did so many things, but people only did one thing in our app. They only did one thing, and they were like, every time they used it, they were like, wow, this thing's crazy. Can you guess what it was in the app?
it would be reading your email in the morning or
It was
uh
generating podcasts. People were like,
oh,
wow, I really love that I can just generate podcasts in this app about anything. And we were like, oh, that's really interesting, right? We built like 8 features and people only use one thing. And so we had to throw away the whole app and keep just one part of it. But I think that's just how it works, which is like you think you have a great idea, you build the thing, and you discover it's just one thing people really love.
and so you built on that podcast thing. Although I, for instance, I've been using it for the last few days. I get to know the emails which have come in overnight. And of course,
Yeah.
my schedule. I love that. And of course, a few topics which I want to get news on. That's how I use it. I'm not using the podcast at all at this moment.
Yeah, so actually, there are a couple of things you could do inside of Huxe. So daily briefing was our main product for the last 3 months, which is how long we've been in early access. And Daily Brief, people really love it because I don't know if you do this, but I've been doing this for so many years. I don't even remember when it started. I wake up, I grab my phone and I read my emails. I'm not even out of bed. I don't even have my contact lenses in. And I'm like squinting at my phone. I'm reading my emails. I'm reading my Slack. Actually, today I responded to an email and I read it again later and I read it wrong because I didn't have my contacts in. Like that's just how crazy it is to try to stay on top of stuff. But then I was like, why do we do that? Why don't we just get up, enjoy our day, and what if we could just listen to like a little
Right.
news briefing, right? Like about our lives. And so that was the main product. But there's two other things you could do. The first is you can create a live radio station inside of Hux. And so you could actually say, look, I really care about AI. But I only care about consumer social products. You can even say something like that. And it will create a radio station for you that will always give you the latest on consumer social AI apps. One of the things I'm super interested in is I love Chinese AI technology. Like I love staying up to date, but it's not super easy to get that news myself. Like I have to go through different sources, I have to do Google searches, I have to remember to do it. So I actually created my own station that's just all about US AI, Chinese tech, how it's all playing out. So I love that. And I like having that news story kind of be more strategic, more analytical. So that's one big part of Hux. And then the third piece is you can just create a standalone podcast. You could say, Are chickens dinosaurs? And it will just make a podcast for you. You could say, how many planets are really in the solar system? Make a
Yeah.
podcast for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess by the way, how many users do you have right now?
Well, we don't generally share it, but I will say like we've had thousands of users. We've had thousands of users since early access. We've had a huge spike over the last day since we launched the new version.
Hmm.
So pretty excited about it.
So, which means that now your feedback loop is pretty strong. Am I
Yes.
right? You'll know which one is working, what is not working. So
Yeah, yeah.
you talked about iterations. What I'm coming to is now when you're getting such mass feedback, I mean, from several thousands of users, how do you prioritize now? Because it was easier when you had with friends and family.
That is a really good point. And one of the things that I try to tell people, especially when I was at Google, I told this to product managers all the time, is that you can kind of have this like data hypnosis where you just look at your dashboards and you think the dashboard is like some kind of like magic 8 ball that's
Hmm.
going to tell you what's working, what's not working. And I always tell them it's not true. It's more like a crime scene, right? You have clues about what happened, but you don't really actually know. So even if you're seeing people use one feature a lot, just remember you don't know why they're doing it. You think you know, but you really don't. And even in early access, like I'll give you like a very recent example. People love daily briefing, right? They were like using it a lot. But I think you could have argued that you could just double down on daily briefing and just make it really, really, really good. And you could have had like a really interesting, stellar product, right? But when I talked to every person that loved daily briefing, that used it like an absurd amount of times a day, and we had these users, I was like, wow, this is super weird. Like, there's not enough news in the day. Why are you using it so much? When I listened to those people, I discovered a very different thing about them. And so the first step I would say is one, abandon what you think you know. Just remember they're all clues. Number two, find people who are interesting that are using your product. And when I say interesting, I mean they're using your product in interesting ways. Either they use it a lot or they used it for a very short time, like almost like an absurdly nothing amount of time. Go figure out like both those people, their stories, and you will find out the next thing to build.
So
And the
basically, you
third
need to talk to them. Is that right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like
Hmm.
I will pretty much throw away all my meetings in favor of customer meetings because it's like in the early days, just going back to point one, you don't know what you think you know. And so there's like a deeper intuition that you need. And so I talked to these two groups of people. I talked to the people who really love it, and I talked to the people who sort of unfairly did not love it, didn't even give it a chance. And so I talked to both those groups. And one of the things that I realized is when you ask people about their lives, so this is my next point, ask about their lives, don't ask about the product. You will learn a
Hmm.
lot about their motivations for what brought them to your app. And what you hear inherently in these conversations is the promise of your app, kind of like, hey, here's what I thought it was going to do for me. And if you built your product, and you spend a lot of time thinking about it, you will actually, in your mind, realize the gaps, right? The person will start to describe, well, here's my life. Here are the things I care about. Here's why I love Hux. I get to do this. But as a product person, you'll actually be able to see side by side that person's vision does not match with what the thing can do. This
Mm,
does like a very small, minuscule piece of this. And you could be like, okay, that's good, right? But what if you could expand the surface of what your thing could do so it captures more of that magic?
mm, mm.
And that is very hard because when you look at the data, it's not going to tell you that. The data will
Correct.
just tell you. Yeah.
That's an amazing insight. So you can't just look at the data, which is especially yours as a consumer app, which means you're going to be flooded with data.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. We're
you know
playing with
you
data
so
all the time.
you can't quite make a lot of good decisions using that. So finally, it comes down to traditional. Let me chat with this group and the other group.
Yes, and I think this is interesting because I feel like, hey, there's a time for data, there's not a time for data. You need to build your own intuition for when to use what, right? Because of course you could accidentally talk to like five people that love the product and you'd come away with the wrong impression and say you have like absolutely no users. It would be a
Yeah.
really bad time. But I think that in real life, like if you are building a product that is for people, which is pretty much
Mm,
all of us,
mm.
you should be connecting with people. And I always tell people if you are building AI products, just remember that one, AI is new, and every person that uses AI is changing as a result of that technology, right? Like even the things we believe about people and their needs and their problems and the things we're going to solve, that's changing so rapidly that even the things that we take for granted and we know to be true will not be true. So just always be learning. Look at every day with like a fresh set of eyes and a fresh set of expectations and let
Yeah.
let people surprise you.
Sure. So how far ahead do you think of Hux that way? I mean, you're only thinking of the next build release, or you're thinking a little further ahead?
Um, I always, this is so funny because at Google, you always had to write like your 5-year plan. And I was like, who knows what their 5-year plan is? It's just such a crazy thing to say. I actually probably think in time horizons of 3 weeks and 3 months.
Hmm.
So
And
those are the
why the
two.
hmm, three weeks is because probably it's a some kind of a build cycle you have. Is that why the 3 weeks?
It's more like if I had to think about what things do we have to absolutely have in the app over the time horizon of 3 weeks, what would they be? And so I chunk that out into week 1, week 2, week 3. So that it's almost
Hmm.
like it's a very short time horizon, but there are specific things that like I want to ship in that time frame. And they're usually quality of life, bug fixes, maybe one medium-sized improvement, right? That's like pretty chunky but meaningful. That's how I think about it. But the other reality I hold in my mind is like 3 months, because 3 months I think is the correct window where you transform the whole thing every
And
three months.
that's very interesting. That's 3 months. So how do you see Hux 3 months from now?
So I will say that we just launched our last 3 month cycle yesterday. And so I will tell you
Okay.
from one day, I will tell you though, one day's worth of learning that I discovered is Hux is really interesting to people because it personalizes the content. But I realized that the type of content we provide is only informational.
Hmm.
But personalization goes beyond information. And so that was my strong nugget from yesterday.
Okay, cool, cool. That's great. Okay, we've been chatting for 34 minutes, Raiza. So I think questions have started coming up. So let's take a look at this.
Yeah.
Here we have from Aditya. At times in the past, it seemed that Notebook LM had better capabilities, including vision, that Bard, Gemini, especially with the podcast feature and the quality of the response. Was there a secret sauce for Notebook LM?
Was there a secret sauce? I mean, I think it comes down to maybe a couple of things. I think the first is, I think just understanding that the apps that you use inside of Google, and this might be really obvious, right? Those are very different teams. And they don't even sit in the same building. It's not like
Hmm.
I could just talk to sort of like the Gemini team over there or like the workspace team over there. It took a lot of effort to sort of meet these people and talk with these people. And for the most part, I think a lot of teams at Google just run at their own speed. They just do their own thing. They have their own learnings. They look at their dashboards, right? And so I can't really speak too much about the Gemini team, what they were thinking, or
Hmm.
Google Docs team, whatever they were thinking. But what I will say from the Notebook team is we were just very focused on
Hmm.
trying to do things, trying to do interesting things quickly. And so
Hmm.
I appreciate the question. I don't know what might have caused them to be different, other than sort of naturally because you had different people running them, you just
Hmm.
arrived at different conclusions about how to do things.
Yeah, great, great. That's a great answer, actually. Okay, what's the name of Riza's company and what product is she building? It's called Hux, spelt Huxe. Is that correct?
That's right, hux.com. If you just go there right now, you can download it. I would love to get your feedback. Feel free to ping me on, we have a Discord community. So you can
Hmm.
actually, on hux.com, you can join our Discord and I'm happy to chat with you.
Yeah, can you just give us a once again for people who have missed it? What does Hux do?
Oh
Just a
my
quick
gosh.
two-liner on that. Yeah.
Hux is the future of personalized content. When you use Hux, it creates content for you, truly just for you. We talked about like you use Instagram, TikTok, right? These are algorithmic feeds that surface content that exists to you. But we thought about what if we can actually, instead of surfacing existing content, create net new content for you. And that's it. It creates um, daily briefings, live
Yeah.
radio stations, and podcasts on demand.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I use it for the daily briefing as well as it gives me a very quick view of the emails I've received through the night and my calendar for the next day, I think, yeah, I listen to it in the morning. So that's what it
Yeah,
does.
yeah.
Okay. Riza mentioned about creating a radio station for getting customized news from different sources. Can this feature be integrated with other products? For example, if I have a travel related app, can I integrate the radio station with the app giving travel related info like weather and stuff like that to people?
Great question. Right now, you can't really integrate it easily with existing apps. However, it's pretty robust. So there's a couple of ways you can create radio stations. You could even just write a prompt. So when you create a live station today, you can say, "Hey, create a travel-focused app that gives me the weather, the train news or transit news, etc." You could write that, or you could even point it to URLs if there are URLs that you typically use, or you could even use an RSS feed, or you could even use subreddits. And so there's just like all kinds of things that you can kind of assemble together to create your radio station. But yeah, as long as the data is out there, it will scrape it, it will use it.
So you're saying you can just create it as a prompt in one of the LLMs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
pretty
I
much.
mean, in Hux itself, you can just write the prompt for the station and it will do it.
Oh, I see. In Hux itself. Okay. I haven't seen that, by the way. Of course, I haven't explored the app that much to see. I haven't seen where I can write a prompt. Okay, but
Yeah,
I'll keep that in mind.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, next question. Have you considered the enterprise customer base that Hux, given the kind of use cases you are focusing on? Which means, can you give this to enterprises?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's not enterprise focused, which, everybody can tell. But I think that it has a lot of practical use and utility for the enterprise use case. I mean, think about it. Personalized content applies to everyone. Think
Hmm.
about just the use case of like, hey, I'm a new person joining a company. Well, I would love to get a personalized onboarding, right? And so
Hmm.
I think that actually the learning that we are doing to try to create personalized content for people is the sort of thing that is quite unique and highly
Hmm.
applicable. And so even though I think that the first pass we're doing here is consumer, there's a lot of utility for enterprise. And I think if it brings us to that place, I think there's totally something feasible there.
Cool, cool, great, wonderful. Okay, I think those are the questions for the moment. Let me just continue a few more questions I wanted to ask, especially on building great products, because that's really the theme out
Sure.
here. So how do you? I mean, you have put together. It's not just the three founders. You have a team as well, I suppose.
It's 5 people.
5 people. That's three plus two.
Yeah.
So three founders plus two. That's phenomenal. So how do you find the right people to work in your team?
Well, to be honest with you, I think I don't know. It's such a funny thing to answer because we've only hired two people, but the answer is that it's people we've known before, we've worked with before. And
Ah,
so I think
okay.
in the early days, that's what you should do. You should hire people that you know, that you trust, people that you admire, and you should convince them to go work on your crazy idea.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and you got the credibility, the background as well to pull
Oh,
in people. Are all five of you from Google, by the way?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Are all five of you from Google?
Yes.
Okay.
We're, we're all from one of the engineers that we hired is actually um she did all the prompts for Notebook. She wrote all the prompts and we worked very, very, very closely together for years. And the other engineer was actually my very first engineer that I worked with when I joined Labs.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Finally, final question. I know others don't have any other questions. We'll finish in another couple of minutes. Question is, there are a whole bunch of founders over here, for different products they are chasing or different ideas they're chasing. What is that one advice you would give them based on your entire experience?
Yeah. I mean, my advice is to just keep going. I think that you don't know what's going to happen next, even when you think you do. And I think that you will meet a lot of people that will cheer you on, and you will meet a lot of people that say negative things about you. But neither of those two groups of people know what's going to happen either. And so I think the most important thing is to sort of try to keep your head above water, keep going, and just pursue every day with curiosity, humility, and joy. Just go do fun
Hmm.
stuff.
Go do fun stuff. Cool. Okay, there's one question which has come up over here from Krishnan. Haven't used Hux. Yeah, he's probably hearing about it for the first time. I hear it creates personalized content. What about privacy security issues, especially when it's going into your email and calendar?
Yeah.
How
So
do
I
you
think
convince people? Yeah.
So I think about it this way, which is first, we don't train on user data. We're not training any AI models with the data. And really, even in our terms of service, I think like the reality is we are just asking for your permission to take that information so that we can do some analysis over it and we can give it back to you. Like, that's it. That's all we're doing. I think from the privacy perspective, people, generally ask about it. One of the things that we found is that there is a very, very high rate of people that do connect their email and their calendar. So I think the utility is great enough that people are willing to try it because we're all drowning in our email and our calendar. And, on our side, I think like what I said earlier about what we're doing with your data is it like it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, at least for me, by the way, I don't fret too much about my email volume.
Yeah.
What I have a problem with is WhatsApp messages, by the way. I get hundreds of them. It's a real problem. And
That's so
I'm sure
funny.
I'm not the only one.
Okay, well, I will go work on WhatsApp as a data source.
It's just incredible. If I got the same summary for WhatsApp, I mean, I tell you, I'd be a huge fan because I
That's
get
so
I get probably 10, 15 mails overnight, but WhatsApp I get in the hundreds. So
that's crazy. Okay, I'll look into it.
maybe it's so more so in this part of the world, but definitely I'm not the only one who
Yeah,
has that
yeah,
issue.
I hear you.
Okay, cool, great. I think that's let's see. There's another question which has come. Guys, you need to put up your questions quickly. Okay. Do you have plans for Android? Must be having Android. Do you?
There
Do you
is
have
an
Android?
Android, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Web app.
Oh, web app's a good one. Yeah, we'll think about that.
Okay. And the RSS feed feature seemed interesting, and more data sources in an agentic style approach would be very useful. I think it's more a suggestion.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I would say try out the RSS feed feature now. I think it's really interesting to create a radio station about pretty much anything.
Cool. Cool. Great. Okay. Lovely. Raiza, I can't thank you enough. Thank you for coming on very early in the morning, 7 a.m., and staying on and talking about your experience and all the wonderful nuggets of advice you've given several of us over here. Thank you.
Yeah,
We'll stay connected, and separately we'll have a conversation about how Hux can be used by a community such as AIPod.
yeah, amazing. Thank you, MD, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you, guys. Good night, and the recording of this should be available tomorrow. Bye bye.